Hello, everyone. Now, I know that it's hard to keep up on top of what's going on in the Holy Land, but if you want to know more about what's happening here in Israel, I'm Aaron Porras, and this is the Weekly Review. Now, thankfully, millions of Israelis have been vaccinated, but billions more vaccinations are needed, both for Israel and for the rest of the world. Israeli pharma, therefore, getting involved in the production efforts. Israeli pharmaceutical company Teva, the world's largest generic drug manufacturer, is now looking to help in producing life-saving coronavirus vaccines. Teva CEO Kari Schultz explaining that major vaccine developers had approached Teva at the same time that Teva was reaching out to them. And while no companies have been named and no agreements revealed, Schultz is saying that the company feels positive about making a contribution. Teva having already partnered in Israel's world-leading COVID vaccine distribution.
We're very proud to be the partners taking care of all the logistics with the vaccines in Israel. So we pick them up in the airport, take them to our big logistics center, and then we sort of change the packs so that the pack sizes matches the needs in any of the 400 vaccination centers around Israel, and then we make sure that the right quantity gets to the right center at the right time. So this has been an extremely exciting time in Israel.
It's estimated that 11 of Teva's 61 global manufacturing sites will be divested towards vaccine production. But Israel also still battling a seemingly growing trend of refusing to get the vaccine jab. Health authorities then releasing new details on restrictions for unvaccinated individuals, particularly by barring or limiting unvaccinated Israelis from access to leisure activities as they open from nationwide lockdowns. Things like going to gyms, cafes, restaurants, cultural and sporting events, and more. Health Minister Yuli Edelstein outlining a green pass system where vaccinated citizens can prove themselves through an official government-issued app. And over 2 million Israelis are already eligible for these green passes, while non-vaccinated Israelis will in the meantime be able to use the app to display results of a negative COVID test for up to 72 hours after the test is taken. Moving on, the new miracle coronavirus treatment developed by Israel's Soraski Ichilov Medical Center is now advancing to trials with the help from Greece. Hannah Rifkin reporting.
XOCD24, developed under Professor Arber from Tel Aviv's Ichilov Hospital, is now being hailed as a potential miracle drug in the treatment of COVID-19, and Greece wants in on the action. Greek and Israeli Prime Ministers Mitsotakis and Netanyahu announcing at a press conference on Monday that Greece will participate in the drug's coming trials.
If you're infected by corona and you're seriously ill and you have a lung problem, you take this, you inhale this with a saline solution, and you come out feeling good. We don't know yet. It's going into trials. We called Professor Arber and Prime Minister Mitsotakis volunteered that Greece, their leading hospital, would partake in the clinical trials, and I hope that we can approve this because I think this is an example of our cooperation in forging ahead to new areas.
I'm very happy to have discussed the issue of this new drug, which caught, I think, our attention in the international press, and assuming we can overcome the regulatory hurdles, which I think we can done very, very quickly. Greece would be happy to participate in the clinical trials. Let's hope it works. We will all be very, very relieved if we can actually find a drug that cures the disease.
With many COVID deaths being related to the immune system attacking healthy cells, XOCD24 delivers a protein to the lungs, which calms the immune response and relieves one of the virus's most dangerous symptoms. But of course, beyond just coronavirus, Israel and Greece also announcing new cooperation in sectors ranging from energy to economy, security, and tourism.
You arrived here directly from Cyprus, and the three of us, Israel, Greece, and Cyprus, have built up a tremendous trilateral partnership, and I have to say that our bilateral relations have grown. We've just discussed a green passport arrangement where Israelis, when we lift the restraints on flights, would be able to go to Greece and without any limitations, no self-isolation, nothing. And I think this is good news for all of us. Our cooperation is good for our countries, it's good for the entire region.
In a landmark ruling, the International Criminal Court determined that The Hague has jurisdiction to open a criminal investigation against Israel and the Palestinians for war crimes. The investigation into those possible crimes that have taken place in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem will focus on the 2014 Israel-Gaza war, among other events. While Palestinians are praising the decision, Israel's prime minister had a slightly stronger reaction. Chana Rifkin reports.
Palestinians are celebrating victory over the International Criminal Court's ruling it had jurisdiction over Israel and the Palestinian territories, a decision which Israel condemns as anti-Semitic and political.
Israel has been always been treated above the law. There is no accountability when it comes to Israel. Now, no one, including the United States of America, could really provide protection to Israel. You know that always when we go to the Security Council, the United States of America is the one who really shields Israel from any criticism and prevents us from getting whatever sanctions needed against Israel. Today, United States of America cannot do anything, to protect Israel, and as a result, Israel has to be treated as a war criminal.
A pre-trial chamber of 3 judges at the International Criminal Court over the weekend found the court had jurisdiction over war crimes committed in the Palestinian territories, paving the way for a possible criminal investigation, despite Israeli objections.
It's a shame that an international institution that we had so much hope for has capitulated to political pressure. There's no legal basis whatsoever in today's decision, and it damages the faith in the international legal system. Today's decision won't change the reality and won't change history. There isn't a Palestinian state, and there never has existed a Palestinian state.
Prime Minister Netanyahu calling the move anti-Semitic.
When the ICC investigates Israel for fake war crimes, this is pure anti-Semitism. The court established to prevent atrocities like the Nazi Holocaust against the Jewish people is now targeting the one state of the Jewish people. First, it outrageously claims that when Jews live in our homeland, this is a war crime.
The U.S. also expressing serious concerns over the move, saying the State Department was reviewing the decision. Chana Rifkin, ILTV.
Moving on now, rival Palestinian factions have finally agreed on terms to hold a first election in 15 years in just a few months from now. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas ordering 3 successive rounds of national elections, with the first set for late May. However, observers are very skeptical. It's not the first time that Abbas has vowed to hold elections after his 4-year term expired all the way back in 2009.
إلى شعبنا العظيم في الوطن وفي الشتات. قبل لحظات انتهى الحوار الوطني الفلسطيني الشامل اللي على مدار 48 ساعة كان هناك نقاشا جذريا معمقا للبحث عن آليات لرسم خارطة طريق تقودنا إلى إنجاز الوحدة الوطنية الفلسطينية، إنهاء الانقسام.
All past attempts have flopped, largely due to deep mistrust between rivals Fatah in the West Bank and Gaza Strip rulers Hamas. But could this time be different? Both Fatah and Hamas making statements of unity, with Hamas expressing hope that the vote will lead to a new Palestinian National Council.
ترحب حركة حماس بصدور المراسيم الرئاسية بشأن الانتخابات العامة، المجلس الوطني والمجلس التشريعي والرئاسية، وهنا تؤكد الحركة حرصها الشديد على إنجاح هذا الاستحقاق بما يحقق مصلحة الشعب الفلسطيني صاحب الحق المطلق في اختيار قيادته وممثليه.
And the United States is rejoining the controversial UN Human Rights Council after Donald Trump famously left it in 2019, citing anti-Israel bias.
The Secretary General welcomes the decision of the United States of America to re-engage with the UN Human Rights Council. The Human Rights Council is the world's leading forum for addressing a full range of human rights challenges. The Council's mechanisms and special procedures are vital tools for ensuring action and accountability. The United Nations looks forward to hearing the crucial voice of the United States.
Now, U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price says the Biden administration will continue to defend Israel and any bias against it.
Israel and its security, including opposing actions that seek to target Israel unfairly. That takes me to the decision we announced earlier today. And I think our orienting principle here is that the United States can be a constructive force, that we can help shape the course of world events. We can help shape international institutions when we're present, when we're at the table.
Well, as U.S. President Joe Biden transforms the White House, Israel's prime minister had a short response to the latest Middle East policy shift. After former President Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights back in 2019, the new Secretary of State stopped short of recognizing it as well. Netanyahu says Israel will keep the Golan Heights forever, citing the security situation in Syria.
טוב, הם אמרו שהם בוחנים את זה, אבל אני כבר בחנתי את זה. ומבחינתי, רמת הגולן תישאר תמיד חלק של מדינת ישראל, חלק ריבון. מה, אנחנו נחזיר אותה לסוריה, לתופת האיומה שיש שם, למלחמת האזרחים, לשפיכות הדמים?
Another sign of American support for Israel, the U.S. Senate has voted to keep the United States Embassy in Jerusalem, with only 3 senators voting against it. The vote coming after the Trump administration recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital in late 2017, moving their embassy from Tel Aviv to the holy city of Jerusalem. While the Biden administration takes a more balanced position between Israel and the Palestinians, President Biden says that he does not plan on moving the embassy back to Tel Aviv. The planning process is expected to take at least 2 years, with total cost of construction estimating $600 million. The French president has offered himself as a broker for a new nuclear deal with Iran, and he wants Israel to have a say too. Since Joe Biden took over the White House, experts have expected his administration to re-enter the JCPOA, which Trump dropped in 2018. Now, with new demands from Washington and Tehran, the deal is not being brought back just yet, and France's President Macron says Israel and Saudi Arabia should be consulted as well.
And we have to address the stability of the region, and this comprehensive agenda is to be negotiated now, because this is the right timing. And we have to find a way to involve in this discussion Saudi Arabia and Israel, because they are some of the key partners of the region directly interested by the outcomes with our other friends of the region, obviously. But this is impossible to fix the situation without being sure that all these countries are comfortable with this new agenda. But I will do support any re-engagement of the negotiation. This is just what I wanted to add.
Now, much to the pleasant surprise of many skeptics in the Middle East, the new United States administration is appearing to draw a firm line in the sand with Iran. President Joe Biden is refusing, at least for now, to bend to the demands of Tehran. Biden telling CBS News on Sunday that the White House will refuse to lift sanctions on Iran until the Islamic Republic first resumes compliance under the 2015 JCPOA nuclear deal. And this including stopping the enrichment of uranium above 3.5%. While Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Gilad Erdan is already among the first to praise Biden's stance, saying that it's a step in the right direction, but that it's still a mistake to ultimately return to the JCPOA at all, especially as France points to Iran's continued advancement of intercontinental ballistic missiles, and as the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency is now revealing that it found traces of radioactive material consistent with work on nuclear weapons in Iran. So the question then is whether or not Biden will continue to hold strong with this negotiation leverage, or fold in favor of signing a deal as he promised on the campaign trail. Meanwhile, fulfilling a different campaign promise, United States officials in Geneva are announcing Washington's planned return to the UN Human Rights Council, President Trump having withdrawn from the highly criticized body in 2018 for its continuing and disproportionate focus on Israel, as well as its failure to adopt a number of reforms, like reform in the body's membership guidelines that allow human rights abusers like China, Cuba, Eritrea, and Venezuela to sit on the panel and guide policy in the first place. Biden officials, on the other hand, are returning to the dogma of trying to change the council from within, with hopes of regaining full membership status in elections for the council later this year. Israeli security forces Wednesday, in a rare daytime operation, demolishing the home of the Palestinian terror suspect in Judea and Samaria. Just a week after getting permission from the Israeli High Court of Justice, Israeli Defense Forces are razing the 2 stories of a building near Jenin, where suspected terrorist Mohammed Kaba lived with his family, and crowds popping up and clashing with the security forces in the community as Israeli forces entered the area in preparations for the rare daytime demolition. Typically, the military performs such operations under cover of darkness to cut down on potential obstacles or interference, though demolitions are themselves fairly common practice as both a punishment for and deterrent against acts of terror. That said, while judges upheld the request to demolish Kaba's home, there is dissent over the justifications, with Court Justice Anat Baron suggesting in a minority opinion that just one of the floors be demolished, writing that she has not found any evidence that these demolitions achieve a real deterrent, if not even the opposite, and adding that demolishing the second floor in which Kaba's wife and children live would be disproportionate, as they were in no way involved in the attack. Kaba has confessed to the terrorist murder of Esther Holgan in late December 2020, an attack in which he repeatedly beat Holgan with stones to her head as the 52-year-old mother of 6 was out for a hike in the forest near her home. Kaba claims that this was somehow an act of vengeance for a security prisoner who died 6 weeks before of cancer. Citing anonymous sources within the Mossad, the Jewish Chronicle News on Wednesday alleging new information linking Israel to the killing of Iranian scientist Mohsen Fakhrizade. Chana Rifkin with the details.
An assassination that shocked the world. The killing of top Iranian nuclear scientist and military official Mohsen Fakhrizade outside of Tehran in November 2020. It was also an act that set Iran's nuclear ambitions back by months, if not years, and which was largely blamed on Israel. But now, new testimony seems to confirm international suspicions, with British-based weekly, the Jewish Chronicle, citing anonymous intelligence sources, including Israel's Mossad. According to the Chronicle's report, the minutes-long ambush culminated 8 months of close surveillance by a team of nearly 24 agents, including both Israeli and Iranian nationals, and a 1-ton gun. And the massively heavy weapon was apparently smuggled into the country piece by piece before being mounted to a truck and fired remotely. As for why the gun was so heavy, the report claims that most of the weight was in explosives, designed to go off after the attack and destroy evidence. Then, sources going on to claim that the attack was carried out without any involvement from the U.S. In fact, the White House was only even briefed after the operation was already underway. But whether actually carried out by Israelis or not, one thing is for certain. Israel had its eyes on Fakhrizade for years, and his death did create a vacuum not easily filled. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu pointing to Fakhrizade's importance back in 2018, while exposing intel on Iran's nuclear program.
And you will not be surprised to hear that Sapan is led by the same person who led Project Ahmad, Dr. Fakhrizade. And also, not coincidentally, many of Sapan's key personnel worked under Fakhrizade on Project Ahmad. So this atomic archive clearly shows that Iran planned at the highest levels to continue work related to nuclear weapons under different guises and using the same personnel.
Finally, this update comes as the International Atomic Energy Agency again reports on Iran's latest violation of the 2015 JCPOA nuclear accords. And this less than a week after American officials estimated Iran's breakout time to a nuclear weapon as being just a couple of months away, or less.
Okay, now let's move to a story that is sure to spice up your life. We are talking about saffron. It's the most expensive spice in the world, used to flavor foods in many different cultures. Saffron doesn't just taste good, though. It's now also being used in medicine to help treat symptoms of anxiety and depression. So how will supply keep up with the growing demand? Well, one Israeli startup is working to shake up the centuries-old saffron market. Take a look at this report from Gabby Briner.
It's the most expensive spice in the world. So highly sought after, it can cost up to $10,000 for 1 kilo. Yeah, I'd say it's worth it.
This is saffron, also known as red gold.
Saffron is like diamonds. When a chef heard the sound of saffron, it's like the most valuable thing in the kitchen. I put a little bit of hot water and I open the saffron and I make fish and meat, vegetables, rice, even potatoes. This saffron is coming from the lab, and we can see that the saffron is very fresh, very soft.
Yet there's a catch. Finding the perfect conditions to grow saffron is really hard, and what's even harder is the physical labour required to harvest it. But there's one Israeli startup working to change the face of the saffron market.
We're here at Saffron Tech, where they're using world-class agricultural technology to grow saffron here in Israel, and their business has the potential to turn the saffron market on its head.
So we are trying to take this plant for the first time to grow it indoor. By that we want to fully control its condition, to give it the best treatment we can have, both agricultural-wise, and manipulate the plant to think its full cycle and to achieve multi-cycles a year by doing so. So this is where we're running all our tests and experiments. We give it a lot of different treatments, trying to find the best treatments to give us the best yield, the highest yield and the best quality.
But saffron can do a lot more than just spice up your life. In the medical field, scientists are researching the effectiveness of saffron in treating anxiety, depression, and even Alzheimer's.
Saffron Tech has the potential to disrupt a very traditional old market and to bring new applications and new solutions to this market. Recently, saffron is used as a food supplement and basically also for the medical market as a stress relief and reduce anxiety. Unbelievably, this allspice is known as really good for those matters. In 1 year from now, we are planning to sell our own saffron that we produce in our machines and to distribute it all over the world.
So check out Saffron Tech's campaign at peoplebiz.com, and you too can join this Israeli technology in disrupting the saffron landscape.
Soon you'll be seeing Tesla electric cars on Israel's streets, as they are officially available for purchase and at relatively affordable prices. Israelis can check out the merchandise and take vehicles for test drives at the company's 2 showrooms in Ramat Aviv and Petach Tikva. Customers already jamming up Tesla's online store, indicating that the first consignment of cars could be well on its way to selling out. Ultimately, if Tesla is successful in Israel, it could transform the local electric car industry. The cars start at just under 180,000 shekels, and yes, that is affordable for a Tesla.
And that's it for ILTV's Weekly Review. I'm Aaron Porras. See you next week.